Hey guys, what's going on? This is Roth. I am here with Josh McDermitt. Welcome. Plays Dr. Eugene Porter.
Doctor. He's got the doctorate.
That's right.
He's got his certificate in his backpack.
Yeah, Dr. Mullet is what some people
Dr. Mullet, man. I'm like honored to be on a TV show rocking the mullet. Like we haven't had a good mullet on TV since Uncle Jesse on Full House.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you got like MacGyver. He's more of a MacGyver, Eugene is. Not as good looking, but
handy though, crafty.
Yeah, all that. Very smart and had the mullet, but
he's
Uncle
with
Jesse.
Stamos. No,
yeah.
well, Uncle Jesse would have hung out with Stamos.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Have mercy, or whatever that line was. I loved that show. I went to San Francisco, and I was walking down the street, and there was walking down the street in the condos, and there was one of the windows was a picture of the Full House cast, like blown up, and I'm like, this is the most amazing house ever. Like they get it, they understand
they
it.
Get life. Yeah. Let's talk about you. You said this was in San Diego or San Francisco?
San Francisco. That's where Full House took place. Yeah.
So, let's talk about San Diego. I want to talk about San Diego because, let's switch gears to The Walking Dead as much as we want to talk about
Never
Full
heard
House.
Of it. Yeah.
And you joined this show at its peak. I mean, well, I think it's obviously still going really strong, but it's just a massive, massive hit. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you? Just sort of joining the show on set, but then also doing things like seeing the fan reaction. You guys had the premiere last night.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. I was a huge fan of the show before I ever came on, so I feel like I've hit like the fan lottery. I show up to set and I'm like going nuts. There's all the actors that I love, and Andrew Lincoln wasn't even working that episode, and we shoot an hour south of Atlanta, and he drove down to have lunch with us and to meet us, and I'm like, this guy's awesome. Like, this is so cool. He kind of gave us a tour and the lay of the land. Like, he didn't have to do that. And they were so welcoming, it just made the whole experience that much better. And then just, of course, we're shooting scenes. I'm like, there's Michonne. And, I'm just like starstruck. I still get it,
Do you ever sort of forget yourself and then have to like dip back into Eugene? Or does it almost help because Eugene's all introverted?
Yeah, it's funny because Eugene is introverted. He doesn't really have to say a lot. And so a lot of times I'm just observing. And I do find myself like dipping back and forth. I'm like, oh, okay, I wonder which take they're going to use for Norman's line, or whatever. It's fun to be a fan and to just really observe that. And I mean, just because I am a fan and to see the fan reaction to it, I mean, it's so overwhelming. It's incredible.
Does it become, intense, intense to the point of discomfort ever? Are there ever weird things that happen for you guys in Atlanta?
No, there's never. Well, there's always a couple weird moments where like it usually involves alcohol. Like if we all, because we all like live in the same neighborhood in Atlanta, and we'll go to dinner all the time, and then there's usually some guy who's a fan, but he's had a little too much to drink and just kind of like sits at the table with us, and we're like, okay, we were just talking about spoilers, but I guess we're not gonna say anything anymore, There's always a couple awkward moments here and there, but the fans are awesome, and they're just rabid. I mean, I love the show, but I don't know that I've ever loved anything as much as these fans love this show. And it is overwhelming, but it's so fun. It's great.
How careful do you have to be about things like spoilers? Because, I mean, you're mentioning that. I know that, there used to be cast dinners for, like, goodbye dinners when somebody had died and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you have to now do that a different way or celebrate that person a different way because it's out there and the fans know that that's a thing?
Yeah, the fans know the death dinners are there, and I don't want to say if we've had death dinners or not, just because, that's a little spoilery. But no, they usually descend on a restaurant, and they try and have a private room so that people don't overhear that they're giving a toast to Herschel or whatever. Yeah. Sorry if you're not caught up on season 4. By the way, it's been 8 months. You should be, but it's like they want to have that private moment and send them off, and it's in talking to some of the cast that had been killed off in previous seasons, like the worst part of it isn't that they're afraid they're not going to find a job. It's just they don't get to come to work with their friends and family anymore. And so to have that dinner is just kind of like that one last thing, and it's a lot of fun.
How quickly is something no longer a spoiler? It's just funny to me that you said it's 8 months already. It's something we talk about all the time. But I'm just curious, what's your take? How quickly is something not a spoiler anymore, and we can talk about it?
I mean, I get it that like some people don't have cable, and maybe they have to wait for the show to come out on Netflix, and I mean that's fine, but I feel like if a show airs over the weekend, you have until about Tuesday, and then it's fair game. Like, you should catch up by then. You have 4 or 5 days at that point. You should be watching it. So by Tuesday, if you haven't seen it, oh well, let's spoil away.
All right, so we know that if we follow you on Twitter, which is, I mean, it is a really weird question. Anyway, moving off of spoilers just a little bit. You said you were a fan of the show. Were you also a big fan of the comic? Were you familiar with Eugene's arc in the comic?
I wasn't. I mean, I knew it was a comic. I didn't know, any of the story. And so when I got the part, I went back and really started reading all those. It's such a quick read, and Robert Kirkman and all those guys have done such a great job with it. I mean, that's where the show starts, is within the graphic novels. So it's fun to go in there and see what's going on with different characters, but you quickly realize that the show is much different than the comics. Like, they pull storylines, they use it for inspiration, but it very much likes to do its own thing. And that's kind of been, on a show where they like to kill off their main characters, that's been a thing where I'm going, okay, I don't know how long Eugene has. Even though I know what's going on in the comics, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was going to ask you about that. What sort of guidance did Scott Gimple give you and the producers to how much of the character did they want you drawing on what was on the page and Robert Kirkman, and how much did they want to say, we're going to do something a little different here?
I mean, they pretty much said, you can read the comics, but don't go off of it at all. Like, they kind of give you all the work that they need you to do right there with the scripts for the TV show. And, the great thing is all the writers are huge fans of the comics too. So they're not, actively looking for ways to make it different. They just kind of go, well, this is one way in the comics, but let's figure out a better way to do it. Or, that doesn't necessarily work for TV. I mean, like in the comics, like Rick's running around with his hand cut off.
Right.
So what they
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler, if you haven't read the comics, which you should by now, it's been 8 months. But like they gave that whole like hand thing to Merle.
Right.
So but you just can't do that with your main character on a TV show where all of a sudden Rick's standing up on top of a bus. Well, in the comics, you're not going to see the long process of a one-handed climb up on top of a bus. You can just draw that, but on a show you have to show it, and it's just it doesn't work. So that's why they try and change it up and make it different.
Let's your role's going to expand this year. We've been promised a big season opener. You guys are back in Atlanta. Tease a little bit about what we can expect from the show at large, and then from your role on the show.
Well, I mean, this is going to be. I mean, of course, I look at it from a fan's perspective. It's going to be the best season so far. And episode 1, the first 6 minutes, is so intense, so dark and wild, and all the questions that the fans have will be answered, and 10 more questions will come up, and people are just going to be so happy with it. And, the whole season's like that. It doesn't end with episode 2. I mean, it just goes full speed ahead. They never let off the gas pedal. And that's a lot of fun, because we get to explore Eugene's backstory and kind of his arc and where he's come from, and his relationship with Abraham and Rosita, and kind of their mission to get to D.C. to kind of cure the apocalypse.
How do you think how crucial is that a piece of this season, getting to D.C. and curing the apocalypse? I
mean, it's huge. It's going to be a big plot point, It's, I mean, here we got a lot of cooks in that kitchen now, a lot of leaders in that train car, It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out, and how quickly they can get back on the road to Washington after hopefully they get out of that train car, which I think we know. We've seen the trailer, right?
Yes, we've seen the trailer.
We've seen the trailer. I think it's pretty obvious we're out of the train car.
All right, awesome. Can you tease one big moment? Last question. Is there one big moment that you're especially looking forward to the fans seeing?
Oh my gosh, yes, but I don't know how to answer it without. I mean, just.
It's tough, right? The art of the tease is so hard.
The art of the tease is, I mean, like Robert Kirkman does it so well, and Gail Ann Hurd, one of our executive producers, she's awesome. She teases stuff, and then she just flat out says stuff, and I'm like, well, of course she can say it. She's Gail Ann Hurd. She can say whatever she wants.
She wrote The Terminator.
I
know. She can do whatever she wants.
She can do whatever she wants. I think if you're a fan of the comics and a fan of the show, you're just going to be really excited to see where our trio ends up, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
We're looking forward to the season of The Walking Dead.